Hi guys, I'm Ben Jeater. I run a company called Building IM, and we're bringing blockchain to the construction industry. Not really a lot to do on this front one, but I'm going to talk about the construction industry, how big it is, how it's growing, and what's going on in the construction industry, and where we're finding massive problems. And then I'm going to talk about how we're solving it as Building IM with blockchain technology, because we believe that all of these problems are relatively easy to solve as long as you've got what Paul was talking about previously, which is digital identities. So, quick bit about the construction industry. $8.5 trillion a year are spent on construction. And it's growing every single year at 4.2%. That's quite high for a lot of industries, you know. Banking's below that, transport is below that, but there are some up-and-coming things like cryptocurrencies and blockchain that are, you know, 50, 60%. Here's an interesting statistic. Less than 1% of the money in construction is R&D. And, you know, no wonder we're still building like we were 60 years ago. And the average age of construction worker is over 40. That's gone up from 35 in the 1980s. So it turns out that we are just getting an older population, and construction is becoming slower, harder, and these people don't have experience with computers. This is a very interesting quote I like to do. The residual value of a building is little more than half the cost of its construction. 40% of the man-hours on a job are wasted, standing about, redoing work, waiting for something to do. And 30% of the materials you send to site, you will put in a skip to take away. So $8.5 trillion, that's 33% if you work those numbers out. 33% of that $8.5 trillion is waste. Stuff that's just, we're not getting any economic value from. Take a little example. One World Trade Center, lovely new shiny building, looks great, cost nearly $4 billion to build. And there's a nice big number at the bottom there. $1.3 billion went in the toilet for that building alone. It's one building in one city, in one country. That's almost criminal, in my opinion, that we're wasting that much money. And we're trying to digitize construction. So we've got modeling coming in, we've got 3D CAD, but then we get to site and we just get a 2D paper drawing and we build from the 2D paper drawing. So all that work we've done to do all the modeling, to do all of that beautiful planning in 3D, we just don't do it. We just don't use it on site. Because what do you need to see a 3D model on site? You need a computer, or you need something that's digital that's going to show you that information, because you can't print out a 3D model and give it to everyone. But I mentioned earlier, the average age of a construction worker is 40. These people did not grow up with 3D software. They didn't grow up with tablets. They didn't grow up with computers in their houses. So they mostly don't know how to use a computer. You'll be surprised how many construction workers have never used a computer a day of their working lives. And they do not know how to turn one on, let alone use it to find the information they need in a 3D model. So we print it out and give them a 2D drawing. My last job was a product manager, and I was asked pretty much every week, how do I know what you're selling me is the right product? It's approved. How do I know? How do I know it's not a knockoff? China have this lovely symbol they call the China export symbol, which looks exactly like the European symbol for conformity European. Only difference is the C and the E are a bit closer together. Now, my wife actually has some beauty equipment, and it has the China export mark on it. This was sold to her by a very prestigious shop in the UK. So their buyer has looked at that and gone, it's CE marked, let's stock it. But it's got the China export mark on it. They illegally sold that to my wife. I don't blame that person. How would they know? I only know because I had to live in the world where that was a problem for me. So we are producing fake materials in China, shipping around the world, and it's ending up in your buildings. Doesn't perform as it's meant to. It's probably of a lower quality. It might break. And you're filling your building that's going to be occupied for 40 to 100 years with stuff that's going to break next week. All that waste, this is another contributing factor. I set up my company, Building IM. It cost me £18. That's all you need to pay in the UK, £18 to register your company. If I do a shit job, I can just start up a new company. It costs me £18. I can have a different name. What does it matter? If I cause a massive issue on a building site, I can turn up the next day as a different company, just stick a different logo on my van. And this happens all the time. There are companies that change name every job. There are companies that exist just to do a single construction job. So how can you prove that the person who's going to do your work is going to do a good job? You can't, because there's no traceability for that person and all the work they've done. So we've talked about information, we've talked about materials, we've talked about individuals. How do we trace these people all the way through their construction lives, all this information through its construction phases, and all these materials from the day they come out of the factory to the day they're chucked away because they're broken or they're, replaced? Because that's where we're going to save money, because we're going to have traceability. And this is why my business uses Factum to secure its information with digital identities. I'm sure a few of you know about Factum, else you wouldn't be in the Factum room, but it's a two-token system. One is entry credits, which allows you to put information into the blockchain, and one is a variable price token, which you burn to create those entry credits. So if you're running a business, you don't actually have to touch a cryptocurrency. You just touch the entry credits, which you buy from a company who's doing the cryptocurrency part. It's pure data, so I can put anything I like into that blockchain. It doesn't have to be done in a certain way. It doesn't have to be a smart contract. It doesn't have to be, formatted in a certain way. I just take my data and say, that's my data, and it goes to the blockchain. And it's a decentralized blockchain. There's currently 26 companies running it. There's going to be 65. And you won't have to worry about it becoming a security because of that decentralization. The great thing about it being decentralized is, with 65 companies constantly switching in and out in the future, it's going to outlast any building you put up. A company, they might last 20 years. The average company only lasts 18 years in the US. That's the average life cycle of a company. But a building is 40 to 100 years. That's how they're designed. So any company who stores that data for you probably won't be there before the building, while the building's still being occupied. So all that data gets lost. How do you secure that? You use Factum. You store that data in Factum, backed by all these companies running servers. Here's some use cases. So I'm manufacturing something. I manufacture a widget. I stick an ID on that device or in that device, in its firmware, and I secure it with Factum. I can then ship it to site, and someone can scan a QR code on it, or they can, near-field communication, and they can find out that I made it. So it can't be a knockoff, because my company made it, and I can prove that I made it, because it's in the Factum blockchain attached to my digital identity as a company. So no more China knockoffs looking the same with the same packaging given to you by a distributor. We can also do digital resumes. So you're a construction worker, join when you're 18, you go out there, you start doing work. You create a digital identity in our app. So you go for a new job, you can say, I've worked at this company, I've done these jobs, my quality score of that work is 98%. And your prospective manager can go on a website and he can check that all that's true. So you get that traceability of everything that you do. And that's a great benefit for you as the worker. It's not for the prospective employer. It's not for me. It's for you as an individual to prove that you are who you say you are and you're as good as you say you are. Final little use case here. I'm there, I'm working, I've got my hard hat on, and I say I've done a task. And I do it in the app, and let's say 2 weeks later, that bit of something I've installed breaks. Now, on a building site, you can have 1,000, 1,500 people running about. You might have 20 guys doing the same job, like the electrics. How do I know which of those 20 guys did it wrong? There's no traceability there, unless you use Factum. We can check for that digital identity did the work. When they did it, we can even check who signed off that they'd done the work as well. So we get a full audit trail of every single thing that's done in that building. And I think that's really great. We can really audit these processes. And there's no more he said, she said. We don't have to worry about that in meetings like, oh, well, we never did that. Or, oh, well, you signed it off. It's provable now. It's in the Factum blockchain. So Building IM, we're one of these 26 companies currently running a Factum server. We're working with manufacturers to tag their products as Factum digital identities. We're building a tool which will track workers from when they download the app all the way through every single job they do. They tag in every morning when they go to a building site. They tag in every time they do a job. All that gets Factumized. It creates a digital identity and also this digital resume, digital CV of what they've done their entire career. And we don't want to stop there. There's other things we are doing. There's other things we're trying to bring in. Don't want to talk about them yet because they are, I've come up with them. We're investigating. They're not things that I can show you today or talk to you about today. But I promise you there are more use cases for Factum in the construction industry than just these 3 I've put up today. But those are the 3 we're working on now because they're the important ones. They're the ones we believe will really, make the difference to start with. And then once people are more comfortable with blockchain in construction, we can add more features. And they will come. Okay. Well, that was 15 minutes, not my 20 minutes I was allotted. But has anyone got any questions? So I'm manufacturing my widget, and you're saying there's another factory manufacturing knockoff widgets and copying my codes. They'd have to have access into my system to generate those codes at the same time. Because let's say I make it, and then it goes to site, and then they copy it, and then they stick it on another device, and then that gets shipped to site. That first device has already been installed. It's already been marked as installed. So another one comes out the box, and they go and mark it as installed. It can't be. It's already installed. How are you installing it again?
It's a unique QR code for that thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a camera copying all of the QR codes from one factory and doing it in another factory, it would be a race to see who gets to site first and gets checked first. But, if you've let your competitor put a camera in your factory copying QR codes or a worm in your computer system, you've got bigger issues than you're making a good product and they're making a bad product. So that's how that would be controlled. Once the chain is working and once entries have been made, we can make sure that other materials that have just got a scan of the code aren't being used and being entered the same way. So you can't get two digital identities the same. Sam?
You as a company, and particularly when you're pitching this to people in the construction industry, how important is it that these entry credits are A, a fixed low price, and then B, separate from volatile cryptocurrency and the tax issues? Like, how important is this two-token system for this specific application?
As far as I know, Factom is the only low-cost fixed-price two-token system. So I couldn't build this on Bitcoin. I couldn't build this on Ethereum because the prices are just astronomical. You know, you're talking 3, 4, you know, some blockchains are $20 per kilobyte. Factom is 0.1 cent per kilobyte. So every single tag is costing me 0.1 cent. So your day at work might cost my business 1 cent total from every single entry we have to put in. Our product, we hide that all within the cost of the project. So we do it on a per project basis. You pay for our solution, and every single working tag in as many things as they like in one day. And you know, it's going to cost maybe $100 a day for an entire massive project. You know, the software solution, all the apps, all the people, you know, they're going to be charged $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a day for having that solution in place on site. $100 in entry credits is, you know, it's nothing compared to the other costs that I'm going to have running the servers, developing the software, having employees. The Factom bit is, you know, a pittance compared to what we're going to be charging the customer for the full solution. And yeah, as I said, Bitcoin, I'd be paying over $3. Just absolutely, yep. By offering it as a service, software as a service with the blockchain part supporting the software, the customer never even has to know they're using a blockchain product. It's only when they have a problem and they need information verification that at that point we can say, well, luckily we've stored everything in a blockchain. Here's the information. Here's the provable audit trail behind it. Take that to court, take that to your mediation, whatever you need. There's the information. Yes?
Are you embedding other types of data, like JPEGs or images, or is it just text right now?
So Factom takes a hash of the data you've got. It has a header field, which is a hash of the data, but it's also got a body field that you can fill with data if you want to, up to 10 kilobytes at a time. So you'd pay 10 entry credits to put 10 kilobytes in one entry. Sorry. You can store pictures. We've done a proof of concept where people have stored pictures. One of the other ANOs did that. He uploaded a 14 megabyte picture he'd taken. Quite expensive to do. You know, it's storing in blockchain is $1,000 per gigabyte. It's not a storage solution, Factom. It is a proof of information solution for us. Yep.
Take a hash of that picture, as long as you have a local copy of the picture, through the hash into that
Yep.
database. And then if there's ever a question, you have the original picture, take the hash and compare it with what the blockchain and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of what we're doing is we're taking the 3D model of the building, and every single element of that, we can create a digital identity for. So every beam, every door, every wall, every carpet, they all have a digital identity. So you can track the life cycle of every single thing in that building, from design through construction to occupation. And then we can tie that to the manufacturer's digital ID. So you know that design was populated by that physical item, and then you can find out how long it lasts. If it goes wrong, you can scan the code on it, and it can pull metadata like the manual for it, or the manufacturer's information, and all that stuff that you might need in an occupation period for a building. So it's not It's not just one hash of a bit of data. We can link these digital identities together to give you an even a more colourful, more interesting data set, which is all auditable by anybody because it's on a blockchain. Does that answer your question? Yeah? Oh, great.
So this is really like an audit trail on top of a more complicated system, right?
Yep.
The way I'm thinking about the manufacturing environment, right? You have your material requirements planning, you have SAP in general, right?
Yep.
A number of companies. So this is obviously, you are not going to replace SAP because it's going to be hugely expensive. It's more if you want to do traceability, because if you have a product recall, you want to understand the material, where it's coming from, what happened to that material, and how convert it to a final product. You have this audit trail on top of SAP. That would be an application, right?
Absolutely. So normally I'd have a batch number, but I don't have to have a batch number anymore. I can have a unique Factum serial number, and I can then use that Factum digital identity serial number, so when it gets to site, I can scan that. So it's that item was installed in that building. Right now, all I'd know is I made a batch and I sent it to these customers. I wouldn't know where that exact device is.
Right.
But I can if we're using the building IM tool, because you're checking that that item is in that building, installed on that date. So you've got manufacture date, install date, and then breakdown date as well if you need to have that later on. So full audit. And that's great for the manufacturer as well, because they can check when things break. You know, I'm making 10,000 of my widget. How long do they normally last? Because I say they last 10 years. Turns out they're only lasting 6 years because I've got the full audit trail end to end. But the manufacturer can go and find that later. They don't have to ask, how often does our kit break? They can actually go on the Factum blockchain and check how many of their bits broke.
Now, suppliers have to sign on for this process, right? Or this approach, so you can get the information you need.
It's just an API.
Okay.
They can just attach their system through an API to our system, and they might say, it's this device manufactured on this date, because we've got the timestamp of when it was sent, and here's the other information we want to send, such as manufacturer's name, the manual, anything else. We can store that for them, they can store it themselves, and then they get an ID back, which they then stamp on the device or on the box. Yeah? No problem. Everyone happy? Everyone fulfilled? Everyone got all the information they need? Cool. Hi, guys.
So,
What's up?
there's the fixed and the variable side, right? So you mentioned the fixed cost. Why there is a variable side? How does that play against?
Sure.
Why there's a variable side?
Okay, so this is the Factum part, the two-token system. Entry credits are a fixed price, which allows me as a business to budget how much I'm going to spend on my entries. The variable point comes because as we add more and more entries, more transactions per second, at some point, the hardware that I'm running to run all those entries has to get bigger. If I have a single token that's only got a certain price and I'm making a certain number, at some point, the cost of running that server is more expensive than the entries tokens that I'm generating. So we generate the variable price one, and that has a price which converts into the entries. So if I've got a token that's variable priced as $1, that means I make 1,000 entries if I burn it, if I destroy it, because it's 1,000 entries to $1. If it's $10, I get 10,000 entries. If it's $100, I get 100,000 entries. So we're paid in variable to run these servers, and then we convert the variable to the fixed price at a varying rate. So as we scale the blockchain, we're also able to scale the hardware to match the demand of using that blockchain. Because I get a fixed number of variable tokens per month, 1,000, and then they convert at a variable rate into the entries.
So the overall cost decreases the more you use the system, or increases the more you use it?
The overall cost of you as a customer using the system is 0.1 cent per entry forever. So you can budget that. I, as a cryptocurrency, or sorry, a blockchain company running a blockchain, my earnings vary depending on the variable price. But you can budget what you're doing as a business. Traditional business running a traditional company, you know you make 10,000 items a day, so you're going to have to put in 10,000 entries. That is $10 a day. It's easy for you to budget.
Okay. So there's a model you use for your customers that they buy your solution, and there's a model you have to pay kind of for the currency, and that's where
Yes.
some variability, but the customer is fixed.
Exactly. The customer's paying on a per project basis. I'm paying to entry tokens at a fixed price, and then there's this variable bit in the middle because I'm running the blockchain.
One way to think about it is public blockchains have to have a way for rewarding people who are running it. You do that with variable price tokens, so that as the blockchain scales, there's more value to it, the price of the token can go up. The problem with the variable price token is it's unstable, it's volatile, and it doesn't let people plan business well. So if I can separate it out, client side, we have this fixed price and credit, it's not tradable. Once it's created at an address, it stays at that address that you use it. So it doesn't have, you can't change the price, you don't have to worry about crypto tax, and it's fixed price, clients can budget. But then you have the normal variable price token that rewards the people who run the chain, so that as more value accrues to the chain, that price goes up, and then you get the scale for hardware to make the chain better.
Yep.
It's actually a brilliant system. I haven't seen anybody else do this, and I'm surprised. It's, it works so well. Is there a use of entry credit to use the system in warrants and get into the speculative tokens? So the more entry credits you use, the more speculative tokens or warrants, and the supply goes down, price goes up. So that separates you as a customer from whoever wants to speculate on the market. Makes this resolution effective. They buy puts, but you as a customer, you don't care. So it's like 1/10% per entry, no matter what. What ends up happening is you end up with this price floor on the token price that you're at for at least the usage of the network. Because after people are bringing more tokens, decrease the supply. Increase supply and income, you pay a floor price. It's direct. Has the price been coming down then? The token price, is that slowly creeping up? No, the entry credit price stays fixed. What I'm saying is to create these entry credits, you have to work backwards, and decreasing the supply backwards is burden. So there's a certain amount of inflation that goes to more of the servers, but if you're burning more than that, you'll increase the total supply. And so if you're burning less, you end up with a supply and demand creating a floor price of the token. Whereas if the floor price of the token is $4 and the market has it at $2, people arbitrage and bring that down. And so unlike something like Ethereum, which is a brilliant network, I don't know what the fundamental value of it is. Nobody does. It's purely speculative. But with factoids, an investor can actually look at the number of entry credit usage and say, here's the floor price based on how many tokens are being, or entry credits are being put in. And then they can say, I think there should be expected to go times 5 because it's going to grow this much in 5 years.
Let's run some numbers on this. So there's 73,000 tokens made a month, and let's say they're $1 each. That means we can put 730 million entries, because it's 1,000 entries to $1, into the blockchain, because it converts at $1 equals 1,000 entries. Now, if I'm running a business and I start putting in 1 billion entries a month, I'm burning more factoids than are being generated. So the price has to go up to meet, the supply-demand curve has to shift. So that's how it works. So as we go to 1 billion entries a month or 10 billion entries a month, the price has to go up so we can turn those tokens into enough entries to meet the demand. And then there's a speculative premium on top of that token price, which is people going, I think these are going to be worth more because I think entries are going to go to 100 billion in 6 months' time. So that's how it works. Customers pay a fixed cost. The variable token price is based on the entries plus speculation.
How many entries are being used right now?
It's pretty variable. It's not that many. That's why it's a lot of people.
I mean, yeah. So the way I've calculated it is I earn a certain number of tokens per month running my server. For my predicted usage, I need the price to be a minimum of $150 per factoid, because otherwise I'm having to buy them off other people to run my business. And I that predict that happening. I should never have to buy a factoid off another ANO. I should be able to use the ones I earn from running my server. So that means my floor price, I believe, is a minimum of $150 per factoid. $2 billion a year, yeah. So I need $150. So the tokens I earn cover that 2 billion entries. All right, guys, I've reached my limit of time. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope I've answered your questions. And I'll be milling about, so if you've got any more follow-up questions, more than happy to answer them.